Now, for someone watching who uh, really supports inclusivity and wants to make sure that there's LGBTQ representation in all aspects of government and et cetera. So, why is that a problem specifically with respect to how the UK or the US treat China?
Well, for example, what the woke ideology leads to, in my opinion, is system failure. And I would like to say that I'm inclusive, nurturing, and affirming of all people, and that includes members of the LGBTIQ plus communities. I have friends who identify, particularly from boarding school, who identify as transgendered, and that's fine. And we get along very, very. One of my best friends, actually, from school has transitioned, and that's fine. I'm not actually just trying to target those people. What I'm saying is that my gender, my sexuality, my color, these should be the most least important things about myself. And when I've actually been involved in hiring situations in the civil service in the UK, I was told, for example, to HR, don't actually advertise the job for someone who needs a university degree, because that discriminates those who do not have a university degree. And we want to achieve a level playing field. And if you employ people because of what they are and not what they can do, my color, my sexuality, my gender, these are not skill sets. These aren't talents. These aren't abilities. And you hire people because of what they are and not what they can do, then you get system failure. So, for example, if you hire people at the passport office and they have no skill in project management, but they're hired because of one of these other protected characteristics, then passports aren't delivered. And what I find in the United Kingdom is that the civil service is failing because people are rapidly promoted to achieve these diversity goals and not because they are employed because they have these talents and abilities to do things. And again, that leads to system failure. China's not doing this. Russia's not doing this. And eventually this will lead to system failure.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of this ideology sounds very similar to the communist ideology, particularly some of the things that happened in communist China under Mao. I remember there was this whole push to allow the peasants to go to universities because, even though they were grossly underqualified, it was an oppressive system that prevented these peasants from being able to go to universities. So the Communist Party should just force them into universities.
Well, there was, I agree, there was definitely a lot of the Communist Party promoting people because of what they are or what class they belong to and not what they could actually do. And I mean, that did lead to a tremendous system failure in China.
And now China's a meritocracy.
Well, all must have prizes today, and everyone's got to be a winner. And in my case, in the civil service, what I noticed was that we simply couldn't get good people into positions because we had to consider all these other protected characteristics. And I was required to take courses on critical race theory, unconscious bias training, intersectionality. And all this stuff I found was, I took a foundation course on diplomacy from the Foreign Office. Most of it was just woke stuff. There was very little discussed about foreign policy. I did a Army Reserves training day, and the whole first day was just on woke stuff and inclusion and diversity. And I thought, where's the security policy? Where's battle warfare tactics? Where all these things? Now, all this stuff takes precedence. And again, when you have thousands of people in the United Kingdom having their banks canceled and have no alternative because the banks are looking at their Twitter pages and their social media output. It silences people, but also the fact that they had their bank accounts canceled because of that, because it wasn't within the woke values of the bank. This has been a huge issue, particularly in the last 2 weeks with the canceling of the account by Nigel Farage. And I'm not saying I agree with everything Nigel Farage says, but it should be a right to have a bank account and not have it closed because your values are somehow contrary to the new woke, religion.
It is interesting because even today in China, so much time is spent on ideological education in the schools, in the military. It's the same thing in the military in China. A lot of the time for training is spent studying party ideology and not actual tactics.
What this leads to in the British case, and I can say this now that I'm no longer working for them, it's sad because when I joined on the civil service fostering, I did feel, and I believe I joined something quite special. And I saw that system just diminished and destroyed, with this new ideology, to the point that I actually don't think the United Kingdom is a very serious country anymore. I don't. It is literally starting to show a lot of cracks, and eventually, as I said, this does lead to system failure. And sometimes things have to get a lot worse before you really get the pushback from the general public.
And do you see these trends in the United States as well, particularly in government?
They're still not far advanced. You meet Americans who are actually quite proud to be American. But again, if you look at, for example, a lot of kids who go to private schools in the UK, I talk to their parents, or ones who go to the state schools, they're taught that the United Kingdom is this horrible country that just you'd think it was the worst country in the world: slavery, colonialism. And if you try to talk about, well, let's look at what's happening in China, they say, oh, it's racist to say that. That's Asian hate. And there just seems to be the West that we've lost, at least in Western Europe and the United Kingdom, they've lost confidence in themselves. And some people don't believe their countries are worth saving. The kids been raised to believe the country is a force for bad. I've talked to a lot of people who work at the Foreign Office, and they think Britain should just give away its wealth because they destroyed the world. And Britain has very little contribution to the world. I don't think the United States is at that place. But quite frankly, just here in Washington, I kind of avoid the British Embassy like the plague, just because it's tragic when you think of some of the great diplomats we used to have there, who used to house that place, and you look at it now, and it's just sort of people who, are a shadow of what that was.
And so you think this affects China policy mainly because it's shifting priorities and focus to other issues?
Yes, and it's not making us very serious, and we don't get good people into good positions to actually, do jobs. Again, as I said, they're hiring people, they're putting people in positions not because of what they can do and achieve and contribute, because of what they are. And as I said, I'm inclusive, nurturing, and affirming of all people, but my gender, my color, my sexuality, socioeconomic status, these are all things that should not be reasons for why I'm employed in any position. They should be the least interesting things about a person. I think we need to take the view that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said when he said, we should be focusing on the content of a person's character, and not the color of their skin. And again, we're doing the exact opposite of this.
Well, what I wonder is, I'm sure China isn't just looking at this and laughing. The Chinese Communist Party has always been very good about, building on the history of the Soviet Union, using unrestricted warfare tactics, finding fault lines in rival countries' societies, and exploiting them, further dividing them, making the country weaker. I wonder if the Chinese Communist Party has some role in this.
Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they're very happy for us to do all this navel gazing and self-flagellation, whilst they're building deep water ports in our hemisphere, and whilst they're getting Caribbean countries and Latin American countries heavily in debt to them through their Belt and Road programs. And we're allowing this to happen whilst we're engaging in these rather facile discussions. For example, why aren't we invoking the Monroe Doctrine? We told European powers no more colonies in this hemisphere. No more. You're infringing upon our sphere of influence. Stop. We need to do that now. We need to channel a bit more, Ronald Reagan with regards to the invasion of Grenada, or even John Fitzgerald Kennedy with regards to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Why are we allowing them to build a port, whether it's in Jamaica or Argentina or elsewhere? We need to take this more seriously, and we're not. And then, of course, we have, for example, a U.S. ambassador to the United Nations who goes to the United Nations, who basically says what a horrible racist country the United States is. And then China, literally by verbatim, reads that back to us in future meetings and negotiations. So again, I think we need to stop, a lot of the self-flagellation and actually start taking the world more seriously.